This episode of the Media Leader podcast was edited by our production partner, Trisonic. And if you're looking for podcast production support, we highly recommend them. Find them at trisonic.co.uk.
The number of games being played has exploded internationally. In the UK, 4 million people are playing our games every single week. And to put that into context, that's more than watch, high-rating TV shows.
Welcome to the Media Leader podcast. I'm Jack Benjamin. The New York Times is something of a rarity in contemporary news publishing, a giant that has seen double-digit revenue growth and consistent readership growth. When I talk to publishers, many have pointed to the Gray Lady as having developed a model they want to emulate. So to kick off our Publishing Week in Focus here at the Media Leader, it was a pleasure to sit down with Tom Armstrong, the New York Times' VP of Global Advertising. We spoke a few weeks back in sunny Cannes about how NYT's solar system strategy of surrounding its reporting with verticals like cooking and games has driven commercial opportunity. We also talked about the publisher's strategy for international expansion and how NYT is embracing multimedia journalism. This is our conversation. I hope you enjoy. Tom Armstrong, it's an absolute pleasure to be chatting with you here at the Seed Tag Lounge in Cannes. Thanks so much for being here.
Jack, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I'm going to throw out some numbers at you. I'm sure you're familiar with them. But in Q1, the New York Times added 310,000 new subscribers, digital subscribers. You're now at 13.1 million. Total revenue's up 12% to 712 million. And digital ad revenue was up 31.6%. And I don't think there are very many publishers, especially news publishers in the world, that can boast of such statistics and such financial performance. Can you talk to me a little bit about how the New York Times is moving from strength to strength, especially relative to some of the other competitors in the space?
Well, Jack, I think this has been a strategy that has been executed over the last few years. As you know, we've moved to a subscription-first strategy, which is to have a huge focus on our readers and to make content worth paying for, and that subscription strategy has really worked. And I think the advertising business has really benefited from that subscription strategy. And I can talk a little bit more about exactly how. But I would also say over the last few years, we've had this huge portfolio transformation. We have our news product, which is, of course, the core business, is our largest product. But we've also launched a sports business with the acquisition of The Athletic, which is going very well. Our games business is going from strength to strength. We're focused on cooking, and we also have a shopping product in Wirecutter. And that product transformation, that portfolio transformation has really expanded the business. And you can see the numbers there.
So you mentioned that having a subs-first business is helping the advertising business as well. Can you speak a little bit to how having such a strong subscriber business especially allows you to have a higher quality ads business? Or is it fewer ads, but they're better, they're getting higher attention? What's the sell, I suppose, into advertising?
Well, I think the portfolio transformation has fundamentally changed who we reach, how we connect with them, and also how we bring advertisers into their world. So across news, sports, games, cooking, shopping, we now reach between 50 to 100 million people every month. And they're deeply engaged. We have 13 million subscribers who pay to read our content. 150 million people have registered details with us. And so they come to our brands on a daily basis because they want to understand what's going on in the world, or they want to watch match highlights from their favorite team. They want to listen to their favorite podcast. They want to solve puzzles or play games with their friends, or they just want some inspiration for a dinner party they're having. And it's a very diverse audience. It's for people who are curious about politics, to business, to technology, foodies, sports fans. And one thing they have in common is that they trust us. 175 years of producing high quality independent journalism means that we've earned a lot of trust. And that trust is really powering that growth across all those brands. And so for marketers and advertising, they get access to this giant, deeply engaged, trusting audience, billions of daily signals in all these new exciting spaces like games, sports, and cooking.
in terms of, I mean, I feel like other publishers are trying to emulate this exact strategy, that this highly successful, different verticals, people are coming to the New York Times. There's some of them are subscribing not just to the news anymore, but a third of the subscribers aren't subscribing to news. They're subscribing to one of the other verticals or several of the other verticals in a different package. How does that, you mentioned that leads to a greater diversity of audience for advertisers. Are you happy that there are some people that are coming to you just for games? I mean, is the New York Times a gaming company or a cooking company to some people?
Well, news is by far our largest product,
Right,
and the most important product that we have. And I think, I mentioned trust, and I think the core, our core journalism is what's earned that trust. News is still our largest product, tens of millions of people coming every week, huge loyalty, huge engagement. But it's that trust that has powered our ability to build opportunities like games. Yes, people will come to games and subscribe to games, but really, we think of the strategy a little bit like a solar system. The news is the sun, and the other brands that we have in the portfolio are kind of orbiting the sun and gaining power from the news product.
halo effect from the sun of news,
Yes.
which is a very nice thing to hear as a journalist.
Yeah.
Where is the readership growth coming from? You mentioned on average for the past, I don't know how many years actually, 300,000 plus subscribers a quarter adding. You mentioned also that lots of people are just coming in, not necessarily subscribing, but visiting for various news or some of these other verticals. How much of that is international growth versus US growth versus, I mean, I'm from Chicago. I know more people in Chicago that subscribe to the New York Times than the Chicago Tribune or the Chicago Sun-Times because people trust the brand or maybe want a more national perspective. Can you talk a little bit about where you see the readership growth coming from?
Well, growth is coming across the board. It is growing faster internationally than it is in the US. And I think, if I think about our international business, in London now, we have doubled the size of our newsroom over the last 5 years. So we now have 100 journalists in London. The Athletic, our sports brand, they have 80 journalists in the UK, covering 20 Premier League teams. The number of games being played has exploded internationally. In the UK, 4 million people are playing our games every single week. And to put that into context, that's more than watch, high-rating TV shows. So, the international expansion of our audience is very exciting for us. There's a lot of traction. Our brands are becoming a lot more relevant internationally, and we see that as, we've got quite high ambitions for the international business.
And you got a new office in London as well,
Got a new office in London.
which is exciting. I'll have to come visit at some point.
Yeah.
How does that then change how you go to market with the advertising business? If you have a growing international market, I mean, you're based out of here in London. How does that affect your relationship that you're trying to build with different clients?
Well, I think we are now able to take a much more localized product to market, engage with marketers in not just the UK, but across Western Europe, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, across Asia, into Australia. So it's an exciting moment for us, and really it's the ability to work with marketers who are in international markets that we might not have worked with before.
There was a really interesting advertisement that I heard run. I was listening to an episode of The Daily. Michael Barbaro was saying something probably very insightful with one of your reporters. And there was an ad that came up featuring the publisher of the New York Times, A.G. Sulzberger. And he was basically calling on the advertising industry to support not just the New York Times, but any news publisher more generally, because a lot of other publishers aren't quite in the same position as the New York Times. Strong growing business, especially in the States. I mean, the latest figure was 2 newspapers are closing a week in the United States at the moment. So it's a bit dire for other people out there. Can you speak a little bit to how you view the wider publishing industry at the moment, especially from the advertising perspective?
Well, I think a lot of publishers have exactly the same challenges as us. And, from the New York Times perspective, we're very, very focused on producing original content. We want to be a destination. We think, at the moment with sort of the tech ecosystem, the AI ecosystem, it's very important that people seek you out by name. We want people to seek us out by name. The New York Times, Wordle, The Athletic, and be a destination. And I think also making sure that the audiences, they come back. They're engaged. They come back every single day. We are trying to create these daily habits so people come to us every single day. That is something that other publishers. We feel that's a strategy that's working for us. Hopefully, it works for other publishers. We want other publishers to succeed. anybody who is doing original content deserves to be supported, we think.
New York Times as a destination. I have it in my bookmarks toolbar. I imagine most people, well, many subscribers probably do, but a lot of people previously would have been coming from search or social or who knows where. I mean, the articles get shared widely around the web, but I imagine that's changed slightly with the advent of AI search. At least other publishers have definitely reported that. Does that affect how you go to market with your clients at all?
No, it doesn't. And I think that is the reason why we are so focused on being a destination. And everything that we do, from the content that our journalists are creating to the product experience, is about making sure that we're a destination, that people come to us, they seek us out by name, and we can also have a direct relationship with them. That subscription business is incredibly important to us, and having that direct relationship with them is something that we are very, very focused on.
I've noticed that the direct relationship has really increased over just the past 1 or 2 years. There's more interaction of, the New York Times lists the top 100 movies based on our critics and our friends of the show, and also you can list your top 5 movies and we'll create a list. Or you go to the book section and you can say, what are the best books that you've read of the past 100 years?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're trying to be more participatory.
Yeah. In the comment section.
In the comment section. So journalists will often jump into the comment section. They'll be taking questions or clarifying complexity. We've done a lot of work around creating community around games. So, games, people aren't just playing games, they're also sharing their scores with their friends.
Yeah.
So
I remember at peak Wordle, everyone was sharing on social media how they were doing, or in group texts.
Right. Wordle has sort of taken over group texts, group chats. There's also lots of forums to talk about games. There are newsletters. We're really trying to build this community. A lot of our journalists are doing much more video content to try and bring them closer to audiences, to try and build that trust, that connection. So yeah, lots of things like that.
Are we pivoting to video again as an industry? And if so, is that a good thing? Because it didn't really work out so well. I mean, a lot of journalists at certain publications were burned. And I think there's some scars there of journalists being forced into doing video content maybe they didn't feel comfortable with. But we're moving back in that direction. How's that working out so far?
Yeah, well, we are investing heavily in video. We want to try and double the output of our journalistic video content. Last year, we launched the Watch tab, which is a standalone, swipeable video feed covering all sorts of topics from culture to lifestyle to politics. And within the Watch tab, we have, for advertisers, full-screen vertical video ads that are great for driving awareness. And we're also now thinking about how we transition our editorial audio brands, for example, The Daily, into video shows that can not only live on the New York Times, but also live off the New York Times and really extend that reach, to other platforms outside of us.
A lot of broadcasters are doing this as well, putting shows on YouTube that, of course, also live on the owned and operated. Do you view that as an incremental strategy, or do you worry at all about if people get in the habit of only watching, say, The Daily on the New York on YouTube as opposed to listening via podcast app or on the New York Times webpage as well?
I think we're going to be very strategic and very deliberate about it. As I said earlier, we want to be the destination. We want people to come to the New York Times. We want that direct relationship. But we also realize that content can live outside. And I think we'll just choose those opportunities very carefully and make sure we're very deliberate about where that content goes and that it makes sense within the wider strategy.
Gotcha. We're here at Cannes. We're talking on the Monday, so you've just off the train, off the boat, and you probably haven't had a chance to soak in all the themes, thought leadership news from the week. But if you have any thoughts on what you think the main topics will be or what you're looking out for, especially from the perspective of a global ads leader in publishing, what do you think is important about this week?
Well, I think AI will obviously be a huge topic as it is at every conference. We are really innovating in that space, especially when it comes to targeting. We have an AI targeting tool called Brandwatch, which has won lots of awards, where we'll take a brand's brief, a marketer's brief, and using Gen AI, we will match that brief with our content, the most relevant content that
contextual type of tool.
Contextually, so that's an exciting. So I think AI will be a big topic. From a publisher perspective, again, something that we're going to be talking a lot about is being that destination, being that brand, making sure that people come and seek you out by name, I think that's going to be very important for us.
And last question, looking ahead into H2. I mean, H1 was a crazy year. I've followed the New York Times reporting personally on everything, all the craziness that's going on in the U.S. and outside of it. What are some of your predictions from a macro ad industry perspective in H2? What would you like to see from the industry in the back half of the year?
Yeah, I mean, the macro, it's going to be impossible to predict what's going to happen. I expect it's still going to be quite volatile. And I think, that what we'd like to see is marketers getting excited about the portfolio that we have, all the new opportunities that we have across sports, across games, across cooking. And as we develop these new shows, the new video opportunities that we have. So, we feel very excited about H2. We think we've got a great proposition for marketers, and so that's what we'll be focused on. Yeah.
Gotcha. Tom, it's been a total pleasure. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you for listening to the Media Leader podcast. Our executive producer is me, Jack Benjamin. Special thanks to our production partner, Trisonic. You can find all our episodes on the podcast platform of your choice or on our website at uk.themedialeader.com. But do please remember to subscribe to be notified of our next episode. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at The Media Leader to receive daily coverage of all the biggest news stories in media and advertising. From all of us at The Media Leader, I'm Jack Benjamin. See you next time.